Welcome to another episode of Everyday Photography. My name is Chris, and today we're going to be talking about portrait photography. And what type of lenses and equipment you might want to use for portrait photography. Today is going to be a fun day. There's a lot of things I'm going to run through pretty quick. I'll go more in depth in different videos on each of these lenses and equipment, but I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. Now, first of all, portrait photography is a wide open subject. You can use pretty much anything, and it's okay for portrait photography. There's just certain things that work better than others, and there's certain things that will give you different types of effects that most portrait photographers will use. A couple different things I'll point out about portrait photography in general first before I get into the equipment. One, a lot of it's going to depend on what you want to do. Do you want to compress the background and make the background closer to you? That's going to be based on the length of your lens. Do you want to blur out the background, or do you want to be sharp and focused? That's going to depend on the maximum aperture that you can have. So the widest open aperture, lowest number on the lens is going to give you the most blurred out effect. Are you going to be using flash photography? Are you not? Are you going to be having multiple subjects, or are you going to have one? Are you going to be in an enclosed situation that requires a wider lens, or are you going to be somewhere pretty far off, so you would be using a longer lens? So these are all things you have to take into account. There's reasons why a lot of photographers have multiple lenses. Because there is no one size fits all lens for everything. You can make any lens work in most situations if you get really creative, but there's some lenses that just work better. So I will start out first talking about a couple types of lenses I use. So one, I only use prime lenses when I'm taking pictures of people, unless it's just out for fun, because there's very few zoom lenses that I think are going to be worthwhile. Now, if you're doing wedding photography is different because you don't have a lot of time to switch lenses. So realistically, you're probably going to be using a 80 to 200 or 70 to 200 f2.8 lens. That's going to be your go-to wedding photography lens, or a 17 to 55 f2.8 lens. That's another one that you use quite often. And most photographers, there's either two photographers, one with one lens, one with the other, or there's going to be one photographer with two cameras, and each of those lenses on two separate cameras slung over each shoulder so that they can rotate back and forth. That is very common. Other than wedding photography, which I consider the anomaly when it comes to doing portrait photography, everything else is going to be mainly prime lenses. So a prime lens, all that means is that it's going to be a fixed focal length. So for example, a 50 millimeter, and most prime lenses have a lower aperture than a zoom lens. So a zoom lens may start out at 3.5, f3.5, or it's going to start out as an f4 or f5.6, depending on how long the lens is. Keep that in mind when you're picking a lens. The lower the aperture, more blurred out effect, and the more you're going to be able to get that dreamy look, soft focus, which people like for portrait photography. So let's start running through these lenses. I've got a bunch of prime lenses that I use. Any of these can be used different scenarios. Some are manual focus, some are autofocus. I'll run through them real quick, give you my opinion, and then I'll post some pictures at the end of this. So you let me know what you think. First off, I'll start with the widest lens and work my way forward. So I do have a couple wider lenses, but that I don't use, like my wide angle lens for I use for landscapes. So my widest I have for portrait photography is a 24 millimeter. So this is a AF Nikkor 24 millimeter f2.8 lens. It's a very, very sharp lens. So this is really good if you're in a tight situation because it goes pretty wide. 24 is going to be the equivalent of about 36 millimeters, which is almost what your eyes naturally see. So if you're on a DX camera, this is going to turn into 36 millimeters. Otherwise, if you're on FX, it's going to be a full 24 millimeters, so it'll be wider than what you actually see. So I like using these. If you're somewhere close, you're just going to be going out, whether it's out in a dinner situation or something where you just need a pretty wide lens, but you want to get a low aperture so you can get some additional light in there. This lens is great, very sharp. I highly recommend this lens. There's also another one that I want that's similar to this. It's just the 20mm version of this. It's a little bit more expensive, $200 to $300. This one you can usually pull off for anywhere from $130 to $150 used on eBay. I would highly recommend this lens if you do a bunch of portraits in tight scenarios. That's where this one's good. Next lens I'm going to shoot over, if you need one a little bit cheaper, similar effect, you've got the Nikkor Series E 28mm f2.8 lens, also very sharp. Does not have autofocus, so it is a manual focus lens. So hopefully you know how to use a manual focus lens if you're watching these videos. But realistically, the sharpness on this is almost as good as the 24. It's not as good, but it's close. And this lens you can pick up for $70 used on eBay. Sometimes they're for like 100, 110. You just got to really look around. But you want one that's in good shape. Make sure it's got no fungus or anything, because it is a little older lens. The Series E lenses are a little bit cheaper build quality, but I still find I really like these lenses. There's a couple of Series E lenses I really highly recommend. This is a good one. This is one I would definitely get. Next, if you have a DX camera and you want a lightweight lens, the 35mm f1.8, it's a pretty good lens. You can get it for about $120 used on eBay. I've seen some for about $100. It does have the manual focusing ring. It is a lighter build quality. The glass is really sharp on this. The bokeh is really good on it. All three that I've showed you have really good blurred out bokeh effects, so I would definitely use any of these in tight scenarios. Next is like the #1 lens everybody buys when they first start buying prime lenses. This is a 50mm 1.8 lens. I don't care what brand you use, whether it's Nikon, Canon, whatever cameras you're using, but this lens is probably going to be your first one you buy. Now, one thing that you will see a lot of times is going to come up is, which do I buy? The 50mm 1.8 or do I buy the 50mm 1.4? So both lenses, fantastic lenses. The 1.4 is a little bit bigger of a lens and has a little bit more light it allows in. It's a little bit faster of a lens. They are both fantastic lenses. There is definitely a difference between the 1.4 and the 1.8 lens. So I'm going to do an actual video that's going to compare the two, doing quality tests on both of them so you can see different pictures. So wait till you see that before you make your decision about which one to get, but I would say they're both really good. Same thing, because if you use these on a DX camera, you're getting a 1.5 times crop. That's about 75mm you're going to be at. That's a little bit long. It's a little bit longer of a lens, so you wouldn't necessarily use it in a close quarters. You use it maybe somewhere where you're 10, 15 feet away from your subject, at least that way when you're taking a picture, you're not right up on their face. So both lenses very good. Highly recommend either of them. Cost difference, you got the 50mm you can pull for about $100 eBay used. The 1.4mm lens is going to be closer to about $170 to $200. So a little bit pricier, just depends on what you're looking to do. Now we start getting into the longer lenses. So now we got, next one on the list is the 85mm 1.8 lens. So this lens is a fantastic lens. Look at the size of the glass on that. That is awesome. I love this lens. It's super sharp. I have no complaints about it. One of the better portrait photography lenses. You can get it for about $200 used on eBay now. They've been dropping in price pretty dramatically. I would say, you know, as a whole, it's an autofocus lens. Highly, highly recommend it. If you've already got a 50mm lens, next one you should get 85. It's an awesome lens. Definitely, I've had that lens for quite a while, and I've used it a lot, and I absolutely love it. So, highly recommend that one. Next one I'm going to go to is a manual focus lens. So, we're back to the Series E lenses. So, this is a E-Series 100mm f2.8 lens that you can get for about $90 on eBay. A steal in my mind. I use this for all kinds of things. I will use it for portrait photography. I will use it for car photography if I'm taking pictures of parts of cars and getting up close and tight to it. I've got some really good pictures I've taken with this. I think the lens is super sharp. It's very easy manual focus. The build quality, because it's a Series E, is not as strong as some of the autofocus lenses, but it is, I would say, equal to or better build quality than a lot of the DX lenses. So highly recommend this lens for $90. If you got the extra money and you want a longer lens, this is a great buy, great buy. So moving on. So now we got another, this one's a older style lens. This is going to be one of the earlier models. So you'll see a lot of times online that you can purchase the AI and AIS lenses from Nikon. They still work. They've got the tabbed collar on them, which is all the tabbed collar is just this little hooked thing right there. The other thing you're going to notice is, you know, this is a AI lens that I'm going to be showing you. So this is a 135 millimeter f2.8. So it's a great portrait lens, long portrait lens. It's got really big glass on it, really sharp glass, and you can see right through there because that aperture is wide open. The overall build quality is metal. It's solid. It's strong as anything. Its focusing ring is right here. So it's got a great manual focus on it, nice and smooth. Easy way to know the difference between AI and AIS lenses has to do with the bottom. So if you look at the mount to this, you look at this lens, around the outside of this lens is a metal ring. This metal ring would have a little divot taken out of it if it was an AIS lens. This is an AI lens. It does not have the divot. If you want to see, I'll do a review later on of some of the AI and AIS lenses. When I do that, I'll show you the differences, show you how to figure it out real easy. A lot of times people list them on eBay, they'll say AIS and it's really an AI lens and vice versa. You really need to know that. Just for metering purposes, so the metering works with the AIS lenses. It doesn't auto meter with the AI lenses. So not a huge deal. It just means you're doing more stuff manually, but realistically, if you're using a manual lens, you should kind of know how to do that stuff. Anyways, so next lens I'm going to go to is the macro lens that I reviewed in one of our other videos. So this is the 105 millimeter macro lens. This also takes really good portrait shots. So when you're looking at this lens, it is super, super nice glass on there. Really sharp. It's a longer lens, so it's 105 millimeters. So you're going to get pretty far, 157 roughly with if you're using a DX lens, because it does give the 1.5 times crop. But it takes so sharp with portrait lenses. One of the better portrait lenses. Now this last lens I'm going to show you is literally my favorite lens that I own. It is, to me, better than any other prime lens, any other zoom lens, AI, AIS, DX, AF, AFS. I don't care what it is. Realistically, this is my favorite lens, and I will use this for wildlife. I will use it for portraits. I will use it for taking pictures of anything. So this lens is the Nikon 180 millimeter f2.8 ED lens, and realistically, this is I love this lens. I will say that this lens is one that I had a long time ago when I was younger, and I sold it. At the time, needed the money, and then for years I've wanted to get it back, and then when I finally got it back, I forgot how freaking awesome it is. It is super sharp. The glass is massive on here. You've got the quality of this is fantastic. Just want to show you this wide open so you can see the glass. It is an awesome lens. I absolutely love this lens. I will highly recommend this lens. It is not a cheap lens by any means. This is if, hey, my tax return came in, hey, my bonus came in, hey, my Christmas came up, and I have a really loving family that wants to buy me a very expensive item. That is going to cost you every bit of $300 used. So not a cheap lens by any means. Now, for some people, $300 may seem like nothing, but my guess is the typical person watching this video doesn't have $300 to go throw down on a lens. So that's a lens you're going to be saving up for or asking for or whatever it may be. But it is fantastic. You can use it in so many different scenarios. So that's my quick rundown of portrait lenses. I am not really going to post any pictures at the end of this one because there's so many lenses we went through. So I'm just going to put this out on there. I'll have other videos reviewing individual lenses, and we'll go through them at that point. So that's it for the lenses. As far as other equipment you're going to want to need, some things that I would highly recommend picking up: a flash. I think I showed this in one of my other videos, but an off-camera flash is key. So if you get something like this, SB600 does wonders. You can get the 800 or the 900 version. Those are more expensive. This one like $100 used, maybe less. I haven't checked recently, but this works great. You can put it on the camera itself or put it off camera flash. I would highly recommend getting a reflector because a reflector works really well to either block out light, or you can reflect light to be a little bit more silver, a little bit more warm, depending on what you're using. Having a white card to check your white balance and make sure it's right is really good, especially for portrait photography, and make sure coloration of their face and skin is right. The other thing I would recommend is, having some sort of assistant or person with you when you're doing some portrait photography, especially if it's paid work, just because it's nice to have somebody who can hold a reflector, hold something like that. If not, no big deal, but that does make a difference as well. Multiple memory cards I would highly recommend because you're going to take a lot of photos, and a lot of them are going to be junk because their eyes aren't going to be super sharp. That brings me to another point, is that when you're doing the photography, just know, whether it's wildlife photography, whether it's portrait photography, doesn't matter what it is, there's one thing every single person looks at when they look at a photo, and that's the eyes. So if the eyes are sharp, the rest of the photo they're going to think is sharp. So focus on the eyes. Make sure those eyes are tack sharp, and then your portrait photography is going to come out really good. I'll do a portrait photography video and tutorial and stuff at a later date, but this gives you an overview of some of the equipment. Hopefully it's helped you out, and if you have questions, feel free to ask them. Definitely subscribe to my channel, like this video, and hopefully I'll bring out some more videos that you like. See you next time.